There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't scream. It doesn't break plates. It just silences you slowly. You were not punished for being loud. You were punished for being real, for having needs, for expressing discomfort, for saying, "This hurts." And somewhere along the way you learn that if you cry, they pull away. If you ask, they get angry. If you need, you become inconvenient. So you stopped needing, or at least, you pretended to. You smiled instead of speaking. You comforted others instead of asking to be held. You carried your sadness in silence because that was the only way to stay safe. This is how emotional neglect disguises itself. Not through abuse, that's obvious, but through the subtle withdrawal every time you dared to be human. They didn't say it out loud, but the message was clear: I'll stay as long as you don't ask for too much. So you became quiet, grateful for crumbs, afraid of being too much. But here's what no one told you. Your needs were never the problem. Their inability to hold them was. We live in a world that glorifies independence but often forgets that self-sufficiency was never a choice. It was a response to emotional starvation. When no one comes to soothe your tears, you learn to wipe them quickly. When your joy is met with silence, you learn to dim your light. You learn to shrink, not because you're weak, but because being small made others feel more comfortable. You don't ask, you don't expect, you don't interrupt, and over time you disappear. But even if you disappear from their radar, your body remembers. Soul remembers. Your silence becomes a weight, a tension in your chest, a sadness you can't name. And that sadness isn't weakness. It's a signal. It's your nervous system whispering, you are not being met. So if you've ever felt that loving someone meant suppressing parts of yourself, if you've ever felt like being easy to love required being quiet, low maintenance, emotionally numb, let me say this clearly: you were not too much. You were just in a place that asked you to be less. That's what we're going to explore in this video. Not just the pain of being unseen, but the pattern that taught you to see yourself as a burden when in truth, you were a child or a partner just asking to be held. And the tragedy is, you learned to feel guilty for that, but not anymore at first. They praised you. They called you kind, empathetic, strong. They said they'd never met anyone like you. Someone who listens, someone who stays, someone who loves without needing too much. And you believed them, because deep down, all you ever wanted was to be loved without being punished for your softness. But slowly your softness became ammunition, your compassion became currency, and your needs became a threat. Narcissists don't break you with rage at first. They break you with praise. With "you're not like the others," with "you're so easy to be around," with "I feel like I can finally breathe with you." And then, when you finally feel safe enough to ask for something, even something small, the rules change. You ask for consistency, and they call you needy. You speak up about a boundary, and they say you're being dramatic. You need reassurance, and they call you insecure. So you wonder, did I change, or did they just reveal who they've always been? Let's be clear. A narcissist doesn't want a partner. They want a mirror. Someone who reflects back only what they want to see. Someone who makes them feel strong without challenging their weaknesses. Someone who stays quiet when things hurt. And you didn't know the price of admission was your silence. They don't rage when you're quiet. They rage when you ask to be met. When you say, "I matter too." Because, in their world, love is a performance. And the moment you stop performing, you become disposable. They twist your words, rewrite your history, make you doubt the very reality you tried to express. It's called gap. And it's not just confusion, it's control. But here's what they fear most: your awakening, your voice, your truth. Because when you stop minimizing your pain, you start reclaiming your power. And that's what they've been feeding on. The gap between what you feel and what you allow yourself to express. That's where they live. That's where they manipulate. That's where they win. But not anymore. This message is not about blaming, it's about remembering. Remembering that your needs were never too much. They just required someone mature enough to hold them. And if someone can't do that, it's not proof that you're broken. It's proof that they are emotionally underdeveloped. You don't have to keep shrinking to fit inside someone else's emotional limitations. You were punished for having needs. But now, you begin to reclaim them. One breath at a time. One boundary at a time. One truth at a time. You didn't become cold. You became careful. The world mislabels your silence as distance. But what they don't understand is that your silence was shaped by pain. You didn't always hold back. You used to speak freely, trust easily, believe openly. And then one day, your openness met someone's weapon. Your honesty was twisted. Your vulnerability was mocked. Your emotions were used against you. And just like that, you learned that being real was dangerous, so you adapted. You learned to read the room, to anticipate moods, to say what's expected, to stay quiet when things feel wrong, because speaking up always came at a cost. So now, you hesitate. Not because you don't feel, but because you feel too much. And the weight of those feelings has taught you that not every space is safe. Not every person deserves your truth. Not every relationship can hold the full weight of who you are. You didn't become distant. You became selective, and the world sees that as cold. But in reality, it's wisdom. Pain taught you discernment, Betrayal taught you boundaries, and silence, it became your shield. Because every time you said this hurts, they made you the villain. They told you you were sensitive, unstable, difficult. So now you pause to evaluate, you protect, but deep inside, there's still a longing to be fully seen, fully felt, fully understood. That part of you never died. It just went quiet, waiting, watching, hoping that maybe one day someone would meet you without demanding that you shrink, that someone would see your emotional depth not as a threat but as a gift, that someone would say, "You don't have to hide here. I can hold this with you." But until that happens, you've learned to hold it yourself, and that's what they mistake for distance. They don't see the courage it takes to walk through life carrying emotions you were never allowed to speak. They don't see the strength it takes to stay soft in a world that keeps asking you to harden. So no, you're not cold. You're cautious. No, you're not distant. You're discerning. And if they don't understand the difference, they were never meant to hold your truth anyway. Your silence is not emptiness. It's protection. It's history. It's memory. And most of all, it's power. Because the day you finally decide to speak again, to truly speak, it won't be to ask for love. It will be to declare that you've remembered your worth. And when that day comes, your voice will not tremble, because you will know that being quiet never meant being weak. It meant being wise enough to wait until you were truly safe. And that, right there, is what makes you dangerous to anyone who expected you to stay silent forever. They called you peaceful because you didn't scream. They called you strong because you never broke. They called you easy to love because you didn't ask for anything. But none of that was true. You weren't peaceful. You were silent. You weren't strong. You were numb. You weren't easy. You were afraid. Afraid that if you ever showed how much you feel, how deeply you need, how easily you break, they would leave. And maybe they would have. Maybe some did. Because the truth is, most people don't want the whole of you. They want the version that's convenient, the version that smiles on command, that holds space without needing any, that listens without ever interrupting with pain of your own. And so, little by little, you became what they wanted. You lowered your voice, you softened your presence, you polished your rough edges. And in the process, you disappeared, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, painfully, until one day you looked in the mirror and couldn't remember who you were before you started performing, before survival meant pretending, before love meant sacrificing your needs so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. This is how the world teaches you to betray yourself gently, through praise, through approval, through silence. And once it works, once you've learned how to disappear without making noise, they call it growth, maturity, grace. But what it really is grief. Grief for the self you buried to be accepted, grief for the voice you silenced to keep the peace, grief for the life you might have lived if someone, anyone, had said to you, "It's okay to be seen, it's okay to take up space." But no one said it. So now, it's your turn. It's your voice, your permission, your return. You no longer need to be the quiet one in the room to feel safe. You no longer need to be the soft one in the relationship to be worthy. You no longer need to earn love by disappearing, because real love, conscious love, doesn't ask you to vanish. It doesn't punish your presence. It holds your complexity. It honors your mess. It listens when you tremble and stays when you cry. And until you find that kind of love, your only job is this: stop apologizing for having needs. Because your needs are not a burden, they are a blueprint, a signal from your soul about what's missing, what matters, what must be held in order for you to feel safe, whole, and alive. So no, you are not too much. You are not broken. You are not hard to love. You were just never given permission to be honest about what you actually need. But now you are. And this time, you're not asking for approval. You're not waiting for someone to say it's okay. You're saying it to yourself. And that changes everything. That the most radical thing you'll ever do is stop pretending you're okay. Not because the pain went away, but because you finally decided to honor it. Because you realized that healing isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Honest with yourself. Honest with your body. Honest with the quiet parts of you that you've silenced for too long. You spent years walking through rooms holding your breath, years smiling in conversations where your heart was screaming, years being praised for your strength while no one noticed the weight you carried. And still, you stayed quiet, because somewhere along the way, you were taught that your silence was safer than your truth. But silence is not safety. It's a slow erosion, a daily shrinking of who you really are. And maybe today, maybe right now, is the moment you stop shrinking. The moment you stop negotiating with your own voice. The moment you realize that your presence, your feelings, your needs are not negotiable anymore. Because you've earned the right to take up space. You've earned the right to speak even if your voice shakes. You've earned the right to ask for what you need without apologizing for it. The people who made you feel like your needs were a burden were never equipped to meet them. That's not your shame to carry. That's their limitation. But now you know better. Now you see clearly. And once you see clearly, you can never go back. You no longer chase validation. You no longer shrink for peace. You no longer confuse silence with love. You walk into rooms with your whole self. You speak with clarity, not compliance. You set boundaries without guilt. And maybe some people don't like this version of you. Maybe some walk away, let them, because anyone who only loved you quiet was never loving you. They were loving your compliance, your absence, your performance. But now, you are done performing. You are done abandoning yourself to be accepted. You are done making yourself small to make others comfortable. This version of you, this raw, awake, fully alive version, is the most powerful threat to any system that thrives on control, because a person who is no longer afraid to be fully seen is unstoppable. So when you walk into a room now, don't lower your voice. Don't dim your energy. Don't second-guess your intuition. Stand tall, breathe deep, and let your truth be louder than their comfort, because you were never too much. You were simply never meant to be small. And now, finally, you are not